The unexpected encounter. The sky above Earth was clear, the sun shining brightly as the quiet streets of the city went on with their daily routine. But something was coming. Something different. In the sky, a strange shape began to descend, like a falling star, but it was no star. It was a spaceship, and it was heading straight for the ground. The alien girl, dressed in strange, glowing armor, stood at the controls of her ship. Her face was hidden behind a sleek silver helmet. Her eyes were sharp, scanning Earth from above. This planet, full of humans and unknown creatures, was nothing like her homeworld. She had traveled far, across galaxies, to bring her ferocious pet to this strange land. A pet that had been feared by every planet it had visited. She was confident that no one would dare challenge her or her beast. Not here. Not now. With a soft thud, the ship landed in the middle of an empty field. Dust and dirt flew into the air, as the ship's hatch opened with a hiss. The alien girl stepped out first, followed by her pet, an enormous towering creature covered in thick, dark scales. Its glowing red eyes scanned the surroundings, ready to tear anything apart that moved. Too close. The creature was as wild as it was powerful. On any planet it had visited before, it had been an unstoppable force, and everyone feared it. The alien girl smiled, confident in her pet's strength. She looked around, noting the empty field. It was perfect. No one would be able to stop her. Earthlings had no idea what kind of beast they were about to face. But then, out of nowhere, the human appeared. He was just standing there, an ordinary man, looking at the massive creature and the alien girl with a mix of confusion and curiosity. His clothes were simple, a t-shirt and jeans. Nothing extraordinary. He didn't run in fear like most would have. In fact, he seemed unimpressed. The alien girl raised an eyebrow beneath her helmet. She expected the human to be terrified. After all, who could stand in front of such a terrifying creature and not be afraid? But this man wasn't even shaking. He just stared, eyes wide, with a puzzled expression. "Are you not afraid?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and irritation. The human blinked. "Afraid of what?" he asked, still standing there unbothered. The alien girl's hand tightened around the control of her pet's leash. "Of my pet," she hissed, her voice now sharp. "This is no ordinary creature. It will destroy anything that stands in its path." The human slowly tilted his head, his eyes shifting from the alien girl to the massive beast. The creature growled lowly, its eyes glowing brighter. Yet still, the human did not back down. He scratched his chin as though thinking about something important. "Well, you should probably clean up after it," the human said casually. The alien girl stared, utterly confused. "Clean up?" she repeated, almost as if the idea itself was foreign to her. "Yes," the human said with a shrug. "It looks like it could use a bath, maybe some soap, water, and a little scrubbing." The alien girl's eyes narrowed. Soap? Water? A bath? What kind of response was that to a creature that could tear a planet in half with a single swipe of its claw? The human seemed completely unfazed. Did he have no sense of danger? Or was there something she was missing? In that moment, the alien girl realized that things on Earth might not be as simple as she thought. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't in control here. And just like that, the first thread of doubt began to unravel in her mind. The alien girl's reaction. The alien girl stood still, staring at the human in disbelief. Her sharp, glowing eyes flickered, back to her pet, now standing motionless as though the mention of a bath had somehow dampened its ferocity. How could this be? Her mighty pet, which had decimated entire fleets of warriors on distant worlds, now seemed completely uninterested in the human, much less terrified of him. She gripped the leash tighter, a small growl escaping from her throat. Was it possible the human didn't understand the danger? Perhaps he was simply pretending. Or worse, was it that the human had seen something she hadn't? The pet growled again, but this time it wasn't in anger. It was more of a confused rumble, almost. Like a disgruntled child, the alien girl's pulse quickened as her pet lowered its head, looking curious. "Stay back," she snapped, taking a step forward and pointing at the human. "Do not test the creature. You have no idea what you're dealing with." The human, however, didn't flinch. He tilted his head, studying her with an almost lazy expression. "Is that thing really dangerous?" His voice was calm, too calm for someone who was supposedly facing a monster. The alien girl's breath caught in her throat. "Is that thing really dangerous?" Of course it was dangerous. Every world she had visited, every civilization she had conquered, knew the terror her pet could unleash. It had shredded cities, destroyed entire armies, and left nothing but ashes in its wake. Yet here on Earth she was faced with a human who wasn't even remotely scared. She felt something strange stirring inside her. It wasn't anger, but something more unsettling. Doubt. Her pet, the beast of nightmares, was now sniffing the human's shoes. It made a sound. Was that a purr? The alien girl's heart skipped a beat. She took another step forward, her mind racing. What was going on? She had been in control of everything up until now. Every battle, every mission, every creature she had ever encountered. She had always been in charge. But now, this human seemed to be holding some sort of power she couldn't understand. She reached out to her pet, hoping to regain some control. But the creature didn't budge. It sat down with a heavy thud, still eyeing the human almost playfully. The alien girl's grip tightened on the leash, her patience fraying. No, she muttered under her breath. "You cannot like this human." With a quick movement, she jerked the leash, trying to pull her pet to her side, but the creature only shook its head almost gently, as if it were rejecting her. The alien girl's face turned crimson beneath her helmet. Was this some kind of trap? Were Earthlings secretly masters of beasts? Or worse, did this planet's creatures know something she didn't? She was beginning to feel like an outsider in her own mission. She tried again, speaking to her pet in a harsh alien tongue, her words sharp and commanding. But once again, her pet simply looked at her with those glowing, questioning eyes. It no longer seemed like the terrifying force it had once been. Her body stiffened. Was the power shifting away from her? The human raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into the slightest smile. "You might want to try some soap, or a treat. That might help. That's what you use for pets, right?" The alien girl's anger flared, but it was more than just anger. It was fear. Fear that she was losing control over everything she had ever known. Her pet, her greatest weapon, was no longer listening. And the human? He was still standing there, casually, as though this entire situation didn't even matter. "Stop this," she shouted, her voice trembling. "You think you can control me? You think you can tame my pet?" But instead of responding with fear or submission, the human only grinned wider. "Tame? Nah, just get it a bath." The alien girl's chest tightened as her confidence cracked. Could it be true? Could she, the feared conqueror of worlds, have met her match in a single unbothered human? Her mind raced, but all she could feel was the sharp, growing panic as she realized this wasn't going the way she had planned, and for the first time she wasn't so sure of what was going to happen next. The human's calmness. The alien girl's eyes flickered with growing frustration. The situation was slipping further from her control with every passing second. She had traveled across galaxies, commanded entire armies, and even stood face to face with monstrous beasts. Yet here she was, standing in front of a human who was not only unafraid, but amused. Her pet, once an unstoppable force of nature, was now distracted by the human's shoes, playfully pawing at them as if they were some kind of toy. She could feel her grip on the leash tightening, but it didn't help. The creature was no longer listening to her. It had completely ignored her commands. "Stop it," she ordered, her voice barely containing the fury bubbling up inside her. "This is no game. This thing is a weapon, not a plaything." But the human simply raised an eyebrow, leaning against the side of a nearby tree with his arms crossed. His posture was relaxed, too relaxed for someone who was supposed to be in the presence of a deadly alien and her savage beast. Is that so? He replied, glancing at her pet, who was now sitting contentedly on the ground, tongue out, staring at him. I didn't realize monsters were so friendly. The alien girl blinked in disbelief. Friendly? The creature wasn't friendly. It was a terror, an agent of destruction that could tear cities apart with its claws. And yet here it was, looking at the human with a soft, almost affectionate gaze. The human crouched down slowly, as though speaking to a harmless dog, and extended his hand toward the pet. "Hey, buddy," he said with a grin. "You want to play?" The alien girl's heart skipped a beat. Play? Her pet never played. It hunted. It killed. It destroyed everything in its path, and yet, there it was, wagging its tail in response to the human's voice. "Don't do that!" she snapped, her voice rising, more desperate now. She was panicking. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had planned everything. But this human was not reacting the way she had imagined. He wasn't afraid of her. He wasn't running. In fact, he seemed completely unaffected. The human, still unbothered, looked up at her with a small smile. "You seem a little tense. Maybe you should take a breath. Or better yet, let me help with that pet of yours." He made a gentle gesture towards the creature, as though offering assistance. The alien girl's eyes narrowed. "I don't need your help," she growled. She had always been the one in control. She was always the one who commanded fear, who dictated how things played out. But here with this human, she felt small. Her pet, meanwhile, was now sniffing the human's fingers, nudging him for attention like a curious child. How was this possible? It was as though the alien girl's fierce companion had been completely disarmed by something as simple as the human's calmness. The human didn't seem threatened by the alien girl's rising anger. He didn't even look scared. In fact, he looked almost bored. "You know," the human said, glancing at her once more, "if you really want to control your pet, you've got to understand it, not just command it." He smirked. "And I think you're not doing that, you're scaring it." Her cheeks flushed beneath her helmet, but she couldn't deny it. The human's words were like a dagger, cutting deeper than anything she'd faced. Her pet was no longer an extension of her will. It was responding to him, to the human's calm, to his peaceful presence. Her mind raced. How could she be losing control of her own pet? Was this human the key to unlocking something she didn't understand? Was he more than just a mere earthling? The alien girl stepped back, her mind spinning, but she couldn't look away from the human. He wasn't like any other being she had met. He wasn't cowering, running, or even showing the smallest hint of fear. The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. What if this human, this ordinary, unimpressive man, knew something she didn't? Her gaze shifted from the human to her pet, who was now nuzzling the human's hand. The alien girl clenched her fists. She needed to regain control. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. But no matter how much she fought against it, one thing was becoming clear. The human was winning, and she had no idea how to stop it. The alien girl's strategy. The alien girl stood in the shadow of her ship, watching as her pet continued to playfully nudge the human's leg. It was as though time had slowed down. The creature, a powerful, otherworldly predator, reduced to a docile, curious animal in mere moments. Her hands trembled beneath her armored sleeves as she clenched her fists, trying to steady her thoughts. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had prepared for everything, but nothing had prepared her for this. She couldn't afford to lose control. Not now. Not with everything on the line. Every planet she had visited, every force she had commanded, her reputation as a conqueror depended on this moment. Earth had to bend to her will, just like every other world before it. And yet here she stood, powerless in front of a human who didn't even flinch at her pet's intimidating presence. The human, still crouched down, continued to pet the creature as if it were a tame dog. The beast which had once torn through armies was now purring. The alien girl's mouth went dry as she fought to keep her composure. This wasn't just embarrassing, It was a complete unraveling of everything she had worked for. But then, an idea began to form. Her mind sharpened, focusing through the fog of confusion. If brute force wouldn't work, then maybe a different approach would. The human wasn't afraid, yes, but maybe that was precisely the key. Fear. What if she could instill fear? If she could make the human respect her power, she might still regain control over the situation. She had learned many tactics in her travels, some subtle, some forceful. But this would require a more cunning strategy. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her helmet as she straightened her back. It was time for a different kind of battle. She needed to show this human that even though he didn't fear her, he should. The question was, how? "All right," she said, her voice low and steady, though her heart was racing. "I see now that you aren't like the others. You think you can tame this beast, don't you?" The human, still seemingly unbothered, didn't respond immediately. He continued to scratch behind the creature's ears, completely oblivious to the building tension. In her voice, she continued, her tone sharpening. "You may think you have control over my pet, but you don't understand what it is. You don't understand me." Her eyes glinted beneath the helmet, and she stepped forward, moving closer to the human. For a moment, she was silent, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. She needed to sow the seeds of doubt in his mind. She needed to remind him that she wasn't just some alien with a pet. She was a force to be reckoned with. The human finally looked up at her, those brown eyes still calm. "I don't think I'm controlling anything," he said simply. "But if your pet likes me, I'm not going to argue." This human, he was maddening. The alien girl's hand tightened around the hilt of a weapon strapped to her side, her eyes flashing with a dangerous glint. She was done being passive. She had never been passive. With a quick movement, she thrust the weapon into the air, sending a wave of energy crackling through the field. The air itself seemed to bend around her, and for a moment, the entire atmosphere shifted. The pet immediately stiffened, its head turning toward the energy pulse with a low growl, its playful demeanor fading into something more primal. "Don't think this is just a game," she warned, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "This is my world now. I am the one who commands power here. And you," she pointed directly at the human, "you will learn that no matter how calm you stay, no matter how unafraid you are not in control." She held his gaze, letting the crackling energy in the air build, letting her power seep into every word she spoke. The human was still, his expression unreadable, but now there was a shift. He could feel the change in the air. For the first time, his confident stance faltered just a little. The pet, still under her influence, began to growl in a low, threatening rumble, a sound that sent chills through the field. The alien girl smiled, the first real smile she had given since landing. Now she had his attention, but she wasn't finished. "Not yet. I'm offering you a chance," she said, her tone smooth like silk but with an edge of danger. "You can walk away now, and I'll spare you. But if you don't, you'll learn what happens when someone truly understands power." For a brief moment there was a flicker in the human's eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. He straightened up, brushing off his clothes with a casual shrug. "You know, for someone who's got all this power," he said, glancing around at the sudden crackling energy in the air, "you sure talk a lot." The alien girl's breath caught in her chest. How could he be so calm? She had just unleashed a wave of pure energy, a signal of might, and he was still unimpressed? She took a step back, eyes narrowing behind her helmet. This wasn't over. But now she knew one thing for certain. This human was no ordinary opponent. If she wanted to truly win, she would have to do far more than just scare him. She had underestimated him once, but it wouldn't happen again. The unexpected twist. For the first time since landing on Earth, the alien girl felt a strange sense of doubt twist in her gut. The human hadn't flinched when she displayed her power, and now, Even after all her efforts to assert dominance, he was still standing there, casual and unbothered. Her pet, her ultimate weapon, had stopped growling and was now sitting obediently beside the human, looking at him with a gaze of trust. Her mind was reeling. How had it come to this? She took a step back, her armored boots crunching against the dirt. The human was still smiling as if nothing had happened. The creature, her pet, was practically begging for attention. She had expected him to cower, to run in fear. She had expected him to scream for mercy, but here he was, calm and collected, with her pet on its back like some oversized lapdog. "This is impossible," she muttered under her breath, not quite believing what her eyes were telling her. The human bent down to scratch the pet's massive head, his hand disappearing into the creature's thick fur. "You're not so bad," he said with a smirk, completely ignoring the situation's danger. "A little wild, sure, but I've seen worse." The alien girl's heart pounded in her chest. There was something about the human's words, something almost too familiar. Worse? Had he really just said that? Her mind scrambled. The pieces weren't fitting. The human had no knowledge of alien creatures, no experience with her pet's kind. It wasn't possible for him to be this comfortable. Yet, somehow he was. The pet, after all, wasn't just an ordinary beast. It was engineered to terrorize, to break worlds, to turn the fiercest warriors into cowering children. And yet, it was practically rolling over for belly rubs from this strange, earthling man. All right. Calm down," the human said, shaking his head as he stood up. "You're not getting any more of my snacks, okay?" He tossed a small treat to the creature, who eagerly snapped it up. The alien girl could only watch in disbelief as her pet, her war machine, accepted this earthling's gestures as if they were nothing more than play. Her chest tightened as an eerie realization crept over her. This wasn't the first time the human had done this. There was no way this human was this good with creatures, especially with something like her pet. There was something off about this entire situation. The human wasn't just a bystander in this moment. He was far more than she could have ever imagined. "Hold on," she said, her voice sharp with suspicion as she finally took a step forward. "How is this possible? You're just a human. No one should be able to control my pet like this. No one." Her eyes burned with intensity, her mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. The human glanced at her, his expression softening for the first time. "It's not about control," he said, almost too calmly. "It's about trust. You don't understand your pet like I do. You've been treating it as a weapon, a thing to command, but that's not how it works." His words hit her like a slap to the face. She knew her pet. She had raised it. It was her weapon. It obeyed her commands. But this human was standing here, talking like he understood it more than she did. Was he mocking her? "No," she said, her voice almost cracking, though she tried to keep it steady. You don't know anything about my pet. I am its master." The human gave her a look that almost felt like pity. "You're wrong," he said quietly, almost as if speaking to a child. "The thing about creatures like this one," he gestured to the pet still lying down contentedly at his feet, "is that they're not meant to be controlled. They're meant to be understood. You've been using fear, but you haven't been listening. You've been ignoring what it needs." The alien girl froze, her heart thudding in her chest. She could feel the air grow heavy around her as his words began to sink in. Listen? Could it be that simple? Could everything she knew about her pet, about power, about control, be wrong? Her pet, the terrifying force she had always relied on, was choosing to trust the human. It was leaning into the human's presence as though it was drawn to something that went beyond force or fear. The alien girl had never once considered that her pet might have its own needs, its own desires. In all her years, she had only seen it as a weapon, a tool to wield. She turned her gaze back to the human, searching for some sign of deception, but found none. There was no arrogance in his posture, no smirk of superiority. He wasn't boasting, he wasn't bragging, he was just present. A strange, gnawing feeling crept up in her chest. The alien girl had spent her entire life in command. She had spent years conquering worlds, bending others to her will, and now she was standing in front of a human who seemed to effortlessly shift her pet's allegiance. She had underestimated Earth. She had underestimated this human. The twist in her plan was deeper than she ever could have imagined, and now she was faced with the terrifying possibility that she wasn't the one in control anymore. The alien girl's desperation. The alien girl's mind raced, each thought more frantic than the last. The human had not only gained control over her pet, but with every passing moment he was peeling back the layers of her confidence, exposing her vulnerability. Her pet, once the fearsome terror of galaxies, was now curled up at the human's feet, looking like an overgrown puppy. It was completely disobedient to her commands. Its wild, untamable spirit dissolved into a calm that she could not understand. The alien girl's fists clenched, her knuckles turning white under her armored gloves. She had never felt so helpless. She was the one who had always been in control of everything, of everyone. The galaxy knew her name. Her reputation was built on fear, on her unmatched power. But now, here on this strange planet, a single human had unraveled everything she thought she knew. She took a slow, deliberate step forward, her gaze locked on the human. Her breath was steady, but her heart pounded in her chest. She could not allow this to continue. She would not be reduced to this. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she said, her voice cold as ice, but even she could hear the tremor underneath. Her patience was wearing thin. The frustration, the fury, it was bubbling beneath the surface, but she held it in. Check. For now. The human looked up, a hint of amusement flickering in his eyes. His expression was casual, almost bored. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," he said, his voice easy. "You've got a big reputation. But a big reputation doesn't always mean you're in control." Her eyes narrowed behind the helmet, and the heat in her chest flared. How dare he? How could he be so nonchalant about something that had cost her years of conquering and pain? This was not just some minor inconvenience, this was an outright challenge to her very existence. Her pet, still lying next to the human, let out a low whine, and for a moment, the alien girl thought she saw something, like joy in its eyes, joy from her pet. The creature that was supposed to bring terror to every world it encountered, the pet that had caused entire civilizations to crumble. It was now enjoying the presence of this human. The alien girl's chest tightened. The pet's loyalty had shifted, and she could feel it. She wasn't just losing control of the situation, she was losing control of everything. She turned away from the human and paced for a moment, her mind spinning. She had to act, quickly. She had to remind the pet of who really held the power. She had to remind this human that nothing, no matter how calm, no matter how human it appeared, could ever control her. She reached for a small device at her waist, a communication tool that would allow her to contact her ship. She had a backup plan. She had always had a backup plan. But as she pressed the button, something odd happened. There was no response. Nothing. Her fingers hovered over the device for a moment, confusion flashing across her face. The device had always worked perfectly. What could be wrong now? Having a little trouble with your toys? The human's voice floated to her, a playful edge to it. He was mocking her, and it felt worse than any physical blow. Her heart skipped. She looked back at the human, her eyes now blazing beneath the helmet. "You think this is a game, don't you?" She spat. "You think you've won just because my pet isn't attacking you?" The human raised a hand as if trying to calm her down. "I never said I won," he replied with a shrug. "I'm not here to win. I'm just here to understand." Understand. The word rattled around in her head, digging deeper with each beat of her pulse. She wasn't sure whether to laugh or scream. Understanding wasn't a luxury she had ever given anyone. She didn't need anyone to understand her or her pet. She didn't care if anyone understood. What mattered was dominance, power, control. She clenched her teeth, and that's when it hit her. The human wasn't mocking her in the way she thought. He wasn't challenging her strength. He wasn't attacking her reputation. He was challenging something deeper. Something that no one, no conqueror, no warrior, no god, had ever challenged her with before. Her sense of purpose. For the first time, she wasn't sure of herself. She didn't know if she could fight this. She didn't know how to regain control. Her hands shook, and for a split second she felt something she had never felt before. Doubt. The alien girl's confidence began to crack like glass. She had relied on fear, on strength, on unshakable will, but none of that was working here. Not on this planet. Not with this human. Her eyes moved to her pet again. It wasn't looking at her. It was looking at the human, eyes soft, content. Something in her snapped. This wasn't just about losing her pet. This was about losing herself. Her breath became shallow, her chest tightening. She needed a way out, a way to regain what was slipping through her fingers. She needed to fix this. She needed to win. But how? There was no more room for games. This battle was no longer about conquering. It was about survival. Her survival. The alien girl turned back to the human, her voice dropping to a low growl. You will regret underestimating me. But deep down she knew this wasn't just a threat anymore. It was a desperate plea for something she had lost. Control. The final confrontation. The air hung heavy with tension, the once quiet field now charged, with an energy unlike any the alien girl had ever felt. It was no longer about conquering. It was no longer about proving who was the stronger force. The final battle was not just against the human, it was against herself. Against everything she had ever believed about power, control, and fear. She took a slow step forward, her heart racing in a way she had never experienced before. She was supposed to be invincible. She was supposed to command respect, to wield fear like a weapon. But here, with this human, everything she thought she knew about herself and her pet had been shattered. The human stood there, still relaxed, unbothered, almost as though he were waiting for her to make the first move. The pet, her mighty beast, lay at his feet calm as a lamb. The alien girl's eyes flicked between them, the growing realization gnawing at her like a relentless force. This wasn't just a confrontation of power. This was something deeper. Her pulse quickened. There was no way out. No more tricks. No more games. The alien girl had always prided herself on having control over every situation. But this human had taken that from her piece by piece until she stood in front of him with nothing but her anger and desperation. I warned you, she said, her voice low, but tinged with an edge of finality. You think you've won, don't you? You think this is a game. The human didn't respond. He just stood there, watching her with a steady gaze, his hands casually in his pockets, a quiet confidence radiating from him. You've underestimated me, she hissed, her eyes narrowing. You've played with my pet like it was some pet, but you don't understand, you never will. With a swift motion, she stepped forward, reaching for her weapon. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The human wouldn't be able to stand against her now. She would remind him what true power was. But as she drew the weapon, something unexpected happened. The pet, which had been lying peacefully at the human's feet, suddenly rose. It stretched its massive body, its glowing eyes locking with hers. A deep, guttural growl rumbled in its throat. The alien girl's heart stopped for a beat. The human didn't flinch, he didn't even blink. Not like this, the human said, his voice surprisingly calm but firm. You can't force respect. You can't force trust. You don't command it, you earn it. The alien girl froze. The pet, her pet, looked at her, its gaze unshakable. The creature had made its choice, and it wasn't her. It wasn't fear that held it in place now, it was trust. The pet had chosen the human. A wild surge of emotion coursed through the alien girl. Anger, betrayal, confusion. But above all, fear. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. She had never had to earn anyone's trust. She had taken what she wanted, and that was all that mattered. But here, on Earth, Things were different. She lifted her weapon, her hands trembling. "You'll regret this," she growled, but the words felt hollow. She wasn't sure of anything anymore. The human didn't move. He simply stood there, calm as ever, and looked at her with quiet understanding. "Maybe I'll regret it, but at least I'll understand what I'm doing." The alien girl's chest tightened. Her eyes darted from the human to her pet. She realized with a cold sinking feeling that her greatest weapon was no longer hers to command. And the person who had never shown fear, never flinched, had somehow won. He had not defeated her with brute force. He had defeated her with understanding. She lowered her weapon slightly, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Her fingers, which had always been steady in the face of any challenge, now felt uncertain. She couldn't comprehend what had just happened. "I don't understand," she muttered, barely above a whisper, her voice strained with frustration. The human smiled, but it wasn't a smug smile. It was a smile of someone who had seen her, truly seen her, and understood what she was failing to grasp. "You will. Eventually. You just have to stop trying to control everything." The alien girl stood there for a moment longer, the weight of his words sinking in. The pet, now completely calm, gave a soft whine and nuzzled the human's hand. It was a small gesture, but to the alien girl it felt like the universe had tilted on its axis. The alien girl felt a pang of something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Doubt. She had relied so long on fear, on the certainty of control. But now, standing before this human, she wasn't sure of anything. Her reputation as a conqueror had crumbled. Her pet's loyalty had shifted, and her own mind was clouded by confusion. She had fought to maintain power, but now, in this moment, she realized the truth. Power wasn't always about domination, it was about connection, and she had failed to connect. I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice quieter now. The human just nodded, giving her a look of sympathy. "You'll figure it out, when you stop forcing it." With those simple words, the alien girl realized that the battle had been won, not by force, but by something far more powerful, understanding. And for the first time she wondered if she had been wrong all along. The pet, finally free from her grip, trotted over to the human's side, nuzzling him as if to say goodbye. The alien girl watched as it walked away, her eyes filled with a mixture of rage, sorrow, and something else, something she couldn't quite name. She had come to Earth to conquer, to impose her will. But now, as the creature she had once ruled disappeared from her sight, she knew one thing for certain. She had been outmatched in a way she never expected, and for the first time, she was left wondering if perhaps Earth had something to teach her after all.